The lights of Paris had never looked more magical. Not to the moonstruck tourists, not to the honeymooning lovers, not even to the artists and musicians and creators who still made pilgrimages to the city of light. The sky overhead was rich and velvety in its sumptuous blackness, a perfect backdrop for the urban landscape. But there was something particularly effulgent that night about the street lamps, the festoons, the fairy bulbs lighting up the sides of the Eiffel Tower. For a rat who had spent the past several days moping in the sewers below, seeing the city laid out before him from a rooftop vantage was almost enough to overwhelm his little rodent heart, especially after the last few days. They were the worst Remy could have imagined. His entire world had fallen apart, and it was all his fault. He had become too cocky, too sure of himself, too eager to share. No, too eager to show off his knowledge of the human world, of television and books, and most of all, of food. There was no reason to bring his brother inside the old lady's kitchen, where Remy had been secretly hanging out, learning to cook. And Emily was different from Remy. Emile was different from Remy. He was a real rat, and he acted the way a real rat does when cornered, panicked and wild. So when the old lady discovered the little rat's nest and pulled out her old gun and began shooting, Emile took off, running around frantically. And then the house collapsed, and the rat colony's home with it, all because of Remy. D'Angelo, their father and leader of the colony, did not panic or go wild. He kept a cool head and led everyone to safety. Well, almost everyone. Remy couldn't even make his getaway like a normal rat. He just had to run back for the cookbook, which apparently he prized beyond his own safety and the love of his family, whom he had never caught up with or found. Cold, wet, alone, and hungry in the sewers, he had stewed in misery for countless days and nights, unsure exactly how much time had passed in that eternally moist and twilit realm, sleeping now and then curled up with that book. But when the ghost of Auguste Gusteau began talking to him from the pages of the book he had saved, Remy knew it was time to leave, to ascend into the world above. He was losing it underground. He emerged into the open air, and it was a revelation. He had no idea he had been sulking all that time under the city of Paris. Not bad, eh? Auguste asked, floating next to the little rat. It's amazing. And look, your restaurant, Remy gushed, pointing at the lit sign. Seems like it's missing a couple of stars, though. Ah, yes, well, the ghost looked thoughtful. Someone needs to work on that. Maybe you. Yeah, right, Remy said. I don't think anyone would let a rat like me work in a fancy human place like that. Well, let's take a look around anyway, shall we? The ghost said, spinning. What have you got to lose? Not much else, Remy said. He scampered down the roof, chasing the little ghost into the streets of Paris, his tail waving gracefully behind him. The magical night faded slowly, first going gray and then Bay of Biscay blue. A normal city rat would spend daylight hours sleeping or hiding or slinking in the deepest shadows, far from humans, cats, and dogs. But Remy wasn't a city rat, much less a normal one, and this was his first time in Paris. He wasn't going to waste the day sleeping. Without any particular direction in mind, he wandered the streets, letting his nose guide him. So it was no surprise that his first stop was the Marché President Wilson, the large outdoor market. Remy hadn't intended on gawking like a tourist, but his first view of the open-air food stands that endlessly stretched down the street stopped him in his tracks. And all the smells. They were things he couldn't name, things that didn't tickle whichever ancestral memory knew what might be edible and what might be necessary to run away from. Bird, but not the little hens the old lady in the house cooked, or the sparrows and siskins of the gardens. Fish, but from the sea, and so fresh they smelled of salt in the tangy water they had been swimming in just that morning, and that was when a market cat whipped out a fast ancient paw and nearly swiped his eyes out. Instinct took over. Remy scampered on all 4 feet. Yuck! He would have to wash his forepaws later. Into the gutter, up the curb, and finally along a spindly, trailless sporting roses. The cat, was faster than he expected. She leapt and nearly pinned his tail. But even before his mind could properly process that, he was already balanced on the edge of a brightly striped cafe awning, swaying high above people sipping their cafe à l'eau. The cat hissed her disgust from below, knowing full well the potential kick she would receive from the ungrateful cafe patrons if she went too close. Half of her left ear was missing. She was smart, a survivor. Remy gave her a saucy little wave. Although he would have preferred to be down in the market and right alongside the humans who were squeezing fruit, arguing prices, and clinging fashionable heels while picking up a bangay for later, staying up high seemed like the safer bet. He leapt from awning to awning along the buildings, then to the cloth roofs of the market booths, where he could peer over the edge. So many different kinds of fruit and vegetables, eggplant of all sizes, in every shade of purple, white, and black. Dozens of onion-scented things that weren't the traditional farmhouse variety. Leeks, scallions, long green onions, calcots, and chives, 10 different kinds of peaches. Remy felt drunk on the sweet, sugary smells that wafted up from the fruit as the sunlight hit it. He almost fell to the ground when he came to the fromageries. The combination of fine cheeses being sold from those booths was too much for his refined nose, which was already 1,000 times more sensitive than a normal rat nose. It was like he was eating by breathing, like he was swimming through an ocean of fromage. Ooh, they were discreet, garbage cans for the vendors, set away from the public, despite the early hour. They were already half full of rinds, parings, bits of wax, and bad ends. Remy's feet began, as if of their own accord, to lead him to them. No, Remy. Remember, cooks make, thieves take. Auguste wagged a truculent finger at the rat. Do you know the soup I could create with the rinds alone? Remy asked sadly. Yes, because I have the clean out your fridge and crisper drawer recipe for broth in my book, Auguste said with a smile. No doubt you could put together something truly magnifique from the waste. But let it be from your own kitchen, eh, Remy? For people who love to cook, food comes to you. My own kitchen, Remy said with a sigh. You don't even know what you're talking about. You're an imaginary ghost. That is why I know exactly what I am talking about, the chef said cryptically, fixing his toque. Come, let's take your mind off this cheese. Let us take a peek inside my restaurant to see what the chefs there are up to these days. Now you're talking, Remy said cheerfully. It was hard to stay sad for long in Paris.